Yes, I'm excited, and I've got my faux burger and my fizzy drink all ready to go. Thank you all for joining us today for this special event with Mike and Pete, the founders of 2269.co. Let's bring them in all the way from London. Peter Dean runs Kite. In 2012, he painstakingly recreated the Victorian circus poster that inspired John Lennon and Paul McCartney to write the song Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. The following year, and with a little help from his friend, Michael Ogden, he created the Time Traveler's Invitation poster at the heart of Stephen Hawking's famous time travel experiment. In addition, Peter runs Novogram, a creative agency in London. Peter, nice to have you on board. Say
Great to
hello.
be here. Thanks so much, George.
All right, cool. Michael Ogden is an award-winning creative director. He's successfully developed original concepts across multiple platforms. Michael has directed a virtual reality experience now out in 130 arcades, co-authored To Do Before I Die, a nonfiction book of ideas published in 9 languages, worked extensively with Pixar's story team, created and co-hosted CrowdScene, a podcast about entrepreneurs, and led a creative concept team at Sony PlayStation. Hey, Mike.
Hey, George.
Nice to see you. Thank
Hello,
you.
everybody. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Before we begin, let's hear a little bit about your crazy idea to invite people to a party 250 years in the future. We have a short video, and we'll ask you to kind of jump in when the video concludes. So,
Great.
nice, Glaz. Let's hear a little bit more about this.
Thanks, George.
Imagine a poster that can change the future, designed as a message of hope for generations way beyond our lifetimes, a message that grows more powerful over time, an invitation to an extraordinary global event. The greatest party of all time, to be held 250 years from now, on June 6th, 2269, a celebration of imagination, exploration, and the progress we will have made. And you can make this happen just by putting this unique museum quality print on your wall. Then, in time, passing it on from one generation to the next. The 2269 project is brought to you by the creative minds behind the Beatles' Mr. Kite poster and Stephen Hawking's Time Traveler's Invitation. Be part of the story. Make history by creating the future. Put it up. Keep it up. Pass it on.
That's some sterling voiceover work from Peter Dean.
Stirring stuff, eh?
Brilliant. Excellent. And hey, thank you for everyone for showing up on Sunday afternoon. I know that's unusual for you all, and I'm not sure that I would be on a Zoom call during it. What time is it there in Boston? Is it 2 in the afternoon?
4 o'clock.
4 in the
4:15.
afternoon.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we do have a presentation for you that we'd like to share with you. Pete's going to drive it. Pete, do you want to call that up?
Yeah, let's get going.
And as George said, and hey, Bill, I'm not sure I said hello to you. I didn't see you before. Nice to see you. We've got a whole bunch to share, a lot of visuals, a lot of pictures, but you know, it is casual. That if you want us to, as we're pacing through the deck, if you want us to linger on anything a little bit longer, you can just jump in. But we're going to go through a bunch over the next 45 minutes or so. But we're going to take pauses in between. So we are going to do little hellos and then past, present, future. And in between kind of each section, we'll pause and we'll take a break and we'll chat a little bit, maybe have a little sip of wine or such. We also have some survey results. So we've got some results that came in over the past few weeks to share with you as well. So
I would also like to ask you a few questions along the way as well, just to get to know you all a bit better.
Exactly. So let's start with hello. Good. All right. And
Well,
actually,
here we
George's
are.
already done it. Look, there's me with less hair and Pete with hair.
This is how we used to look.
That's
So we've
right.
known each other 20 years or so, maybe a bit longer than that, because we've been saying that for a few years now.
Yeah.
And this project has been an amazing opportunity to work together.
I think we're always looking for opportunities to work together. And
Yeah.
we hosted a podcast together for a while. But Pete, yeah, well, I think George has covered most of this stuff. Pete, do you want to add anything to who you are, what you want, or what?
Well, I mean, George is a pretty good idea. I mean, there's not an awful lot I can add to that, but I'm a designer. That's my stock in trade, and sometime artist. Now I'm into printmaking too. So this project really, I feel it draws upon everything that I've been working on throughout my career: branding and designing, writing, all those things, and of course, working with Mike as well is an opportunity to make it even better.
I think the thread for me and that related to the project 2269 is storytelling. You know, so I do work across different platforms, and I'm currently working in virtual reality. But the idea of, you know, how do you tell a story? And I think one of the attractions with 2269 was that it was an opportunity to tell an epic story, you know, told over many, many, many years. So cool. Let's move on. An invitation to think differently. So what does that mean, Pete?
Well, that's how we talk about it. It's just it is a way to think differently. A lot of people, as you guys know, don't think beyond the here and now. So it is a way to put something on your wall to force that way of thinking. So the poster, as you can see, let's just zoom in a little bit. We designed this to read as a sentence from start to finish, with the possible exception of that very first line, a gift from the past. But so it reads, one day the world will come together on June 6th, 2269, starting at noon. You are invited to the greatest party of all time, an astonishing 250 years in the making, a global celebration of imagination, exploration, and progress, held in every city on Earth and beyond. Look forward to one day, every June 6th, a time to think big and be part of the story. Put this up, keep it up, pass it on.
Nicely read, Pete. Yeah, and so you can see we wanted to create something that was simple, and we'll go through a little bit of the exploration of how we got to this final design, and it was a process of simplification. You know, we had lots of ideas, but in the end, we wanted this to work across the board. And you can see, you know, leaping ahead, we got it printed, and a number of people have it in their homes and have shared. It's always fantastic when you get an email where we see the poster has a home. And I know there's a couple people on this call that have their posters too.
I think there's almost nothing more exciting as a creative person to make something and for other people to find it interesting enough to put it on the wall in their home. And of course, our intention is that hopefully we can persuade more people to do that and put it up, keep it up, and pass it on.
It's very much intended as a kind of to spark conversation. So and some people will go, we understand that some people will go, I don't know what that means or what that is. And that's okay too, because that's the start of another conversation. So what do we have next? Yes, this was key. So designed to be passed on from one generation to the next. Part of the appeal of this for both me and Pete was that, you know, how do we make something that is designed to be given to the next person? And that's part of the thinking, which is, how do you, who would you pass your invitation to? And people are gonna have different answers for that. And we include, as part of every print, a record of owners. What's this, Pete?
Yeah, so this is the front of the record of owners. It's again an archival printed card that comes with every print. Let's show you how it looks inside. So when you open it up, you have this. It's like a library card, really. That's the idea. So every subsequent owner of the print would add their name, the date, their location, and a signature. So over time, as this gets passed on through generations, the hope is that this becomes a record, a literal record of owners, but it adds value, like a huge amount of emotional value to the print, because you know, people value things that their parents and their parents' parents have owned.
It's definitely part of the storytelling. I remember the afternoon when we were kind of working up some of these names as well.
You're still not completely on board with Julian Spaceman.
I think there's some charm in that one. Yeah.
That is the year 2255 though, and he does live in Mars. Oh, that wasn't him. Anyway, so the poster, of course, the ultimate objective is to lead up to what we're calling the greatest party of all time. And if you need help in visualizing how that's going to look.
Well, I found this next graphic, and Pete was like, that looks like the apocalypse.
It is global thermonuclear war.
Yeah, imagine people having a good time.
Well, it's difficult to visualize that, so I think it requires a little bit of imagination.
And we heard earlier, so actually, John, you mentioned a good point, which was like the word party needs defining. And it's definitely a word that we've kind of bandied about over the years working on this project. And there are times where we've thought that word wasn't right. But for us, it's a party because what are those things that last for us in our own lives? And that's around friends, and family, and those kind of values of bringing people together. And it might mean that it's, kind of quite local, which is in your backyard or with a couple of people, or it's a much larger, kind of communal experience, where, I mean, this is of course, we will be long gone, but, in our imagination, it's almost like a series of neighborhoods on that day coming together as a community. So we have debated whether the word party is right, because party can also put people off. On the podcast, we talk to people about what kind of party is, right for them sometimes, and people have different definitions of that. But the idea is it's very people-centric.
Yeah, I think the best way, or the way we find it helpful to think about how this might be, is to think of it as New Year's Eve. So there's not a central party that everyone in the world goes to, or one party per city or per country. There's an infinite number of small parties, large parties, ticketed events, gala dinners, quiet affairs at home, but just people coming together, whatever it is. That's our hope. And of course, it's inclusive as well. So we're not selling tickets or trying to do anything like that, but we are, of course, trying to distribute invitations.
And what I like, so Wenda, I just saw a chat. Can one purchase the Apocalypse to get printed into frame? I can find that link and send it to Wenda. I do, yeah. Looks like a big day. An experience in time and long-term thinking. This helped us think about the project because it is an experiment, and it's very much dependent on people being part of it, and joining in. And the long-term thinking aspect for us, and we'd love to hear from you guys, is around, how do you, well, take a step back. The way that we wanted to present this is being proactive about the world that you're in. The way that you kind of imagine your future may look like affects the present. So it's not something that you just put up on your wall and you forget. It's meant to be reflective, to put yourself in a different mindset, a better mindset, to be thinking about people that will follow you and the people that are around you. So you are more proactive. And there's a sense of kind of mental time travel that gives you a healthy perspective, imagining the future. And for me, I know that, I've had the drafts of the posters, we were putting it together, and I would kind of look at, I blue tack, our printed up pages, and I'd feel a level of like calmness. It would kind of put my day in perspective, thinking about a much bigger picture. You can move on, Pete, thinking about a time where I wasn't going to be there. So this is okay, I'll explain what I see in this picture, and then Pete can. I think this is about removing the ego, about reminding yourself that you can't have everything. You can't go to the greatest party of all time, but you can be part of it in terms of passing it on an invitation. And it's healthy to kind of recognize that, from a bigger picture perspective, we're all just, passing through, and to enjoy it while we can. What did you see here, Pete?
What did I see? Well, when I saw that Mike had added this slide, the first question was like, why is this guy painstakingly assembling the word ego at the top of a mountain?
He's tossing it away. Yeah.
It's a half-empty situation, I think.
So this is about perspective. It's a perspective shift for us, which is 2269 is to remind you that there's a bigger picture. And I loved what George said on the one-day video, which we'll share in a bit. But recognizing that we share a lot, and yet actually, George, do you want to comment on what you contributed to the one-day video?
Well, thank you, Mike. The concept is that the beauty of life is that it is all the same. It shares so much. If you think about the DNA and how much we share, and the history it shares so much. And so there's that universal sense of all being part of it. And yet what really makes it special is the differences. And it's the differences that allows things to come to life. And so that's part of what I was trying to say. And I'm getting dizzy looking at those glasses. That's definitely a shift in perspective.
Well, we can move to the next slide. There's less. Yeah, that's definitely a mind bender. But it is a meditation, on the bigger picture, which is again why I think we gravitated towards making a print for this to begin with, because there are different ways we could approach this idea, and we can talk about different ways we were going to do it. But we wanted to have something that could be, in a room, on a wall that you could look at, and it could trigger a different state of mind, and give you a sense of a much broader landscape and canvas. And so some of your anxieties might disappear.
So talking of this shared experience, we're interested in you guys as well. In the next section of this presentation, we're going to share with you some of the things that have sparked our interest in thinking ahead in the long term. But we'd really like to ask you as well, George, Kim, Mary, Bill, and everyone else here, how did you get interested in thinking long term like this?
Anybody want to chime into that? Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, it's there is no other way. I got into this whole thing through wanting world peace, and people are saying, no, it's global warming. You've got to fix that. It's like, well, I said, no, you got to fix world peace. There is no one thing. So we all got to work together with our own mission and look at the future and do it now. I love the word longs now, because we're looking at the long term. We got to do it now. We got to take action. Was it one of you guys who said, or on a podcast maybe, where it was, this is kind of like the end of the world that we can project, that we can predict. We know exactly when it's going to be ending, so we can do something about it. Everything else is like the plague, it just happened. We couldn't predict that, but this we can predict. We know when it's going to happen. So we're just going with our own demise. And it would be very cool if we could do something about it, make a change.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in. I don't know if anybody can see this on my screen. I can't even see my own screen, but this is a picture that was from our Christmas card last year. 8 grandchildren. We have one more coming in June, and that for me has become a primary motivation on what can we do to make the world better for them. And thinking about 2269 is probably my grandchildren's great grandchildren. And what can we do to make the world better for them so that they'll be celebrating in that year. I just love that idea.
Excellent. Thank you, George. Thank you, Kim. Anyone else want to jump in, or we're happy to continue?
Yeah, I'm going to add something that's, I think I come to it from a more optimistic side, I think. Like, I love the idea of the future. And I didn't read a ton of science fiction, but I want the cool tools. I want the food replicators. I want space travel. I want all these things. And so that's the sort of perspective I'm bringing. And I found the Long Now Foundation years and years ago because I really enjoyed what they were saying about how we need to encourage people to adopt some of the technologies that will bring us a future where we have more abundance and some cool tools to help us do the things we don't want to do, and some of the other things that can make us reduce some of the drudgery that we have, but also bring us fun parties and things like that in the future. So.
Absolutely.
I
love that. That's great.
We've got a raised hand from someone, from John Kaparsky.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
John?
Hey, John.
I mean, there's a lot of motivations. I think one of the interesting things about this is is hearing everybody's different motivations around this. But for me, a lot of it is just, I work in software. I'm an engineer. I build things, and I work in the startup ecosystem.
Mhm.
And most of what I see in the startup ecosystem is built very badly because you just want to get in and in front of, and you just want to get it done fast and beat the other guy.
Yeah.
And I've gotten really sick of seeing that, and of the startups that that I see. That, you know, my company that I work with, you know, we facilitate startups, and so we, a lot of times we're facilitating crap engineering, and I'm just like, that's boring.
Yeah.
So and then you apply that to the way you run everything else. You know, if you look at politics, right? So much goes badly if you don't think long term. Why not? You know,
Yeah.
why not think long term? And any tool to do it. For example, hey, let's fix on this date 250 years from now and make it special just because we can. Okay, let's try it. You know, why not?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, all these things are fun. And
I
I
really
think that the main thing about the long now that I think is that gets missed out a lot is that it's not a future, right? It's a now, and it centers. It's not centered on, you know, sometime tomorrow. It's centered on now. It goes both ways.
Mhm.
I think that you know, this that's why I like the record of ownership. You know, it's building a certain history
Mhm.
into this party.
Mhm.
You know, by the time this party comes around, it's already got 250 years of history in it, which is
Yes.
fun.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I mean, it was definitely a conversation that we had, John, around how do you make sure that this feels, you know, that much more present day for people, that it isn't something that's just up there for forever from now. And we'll talk about it a little bit more, but we now do an event every June 6th. So 2019, 2020, you know, so each year. And I definitely relate, and I'm sure Pete does too, around the idea of, because we both, you know, we come from the creative industries, about how you design things that last. And the joy of that, you know, the joy of craftsmanship and making something that is meant to be sustainable. Yeah,
Yeah, there's
excellent.
nothing more depressing than the throwaway culture and things that are made to last, you know, a week or a month or a couple of years, whether it's a piece of software or a plastic toy. It's just awful. I mean, I'm just about old enough that when I was a kid, I was given toys that were my mother's toys, and they were made out of wood and metal and things like that. But it's kind of depressing to see children play with plastic toys that will be thrown away and end up in a landfill or probably the sea.
Those are really useful comments. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's as we move along.
Yeah, we're about to go on a journey, actually, all of us, a little space and time journey through the past, the present, the future. Some of you may, so Pete and I have a podcast for that 2269. It's a monthly, we've done 6 episodes. Season 2 is going to start again in July. But it's a podcast that celebrates things that last. And it's increasingly kind of a road trip to the future in the way that, I've actually just recorded the last 2 episodes that have not been published yet, but it's much more around kind of time traveling. We slingshot to the past in someone's life, and we play something called Decades, where people are calling out highlights of each of their decades in their own life, and then we talk about who will be remembered and what things will last. But the premise, Pete and I have a makeshift time machine. It's a little DIY, something that we put together. It only goes to one date, which is June 6, 2269. So there are some limitations, and it's not that comfortable, but it does slingshot to the past before moving to the present and the future. So we thought we would go on a similar trip, starting with Back into the Past.
And here we are in the past. So where did the idea of 2269 come from? We're going to start by looking at some external influences.
Yeah, this is linked to, you know, our desire I mean, I grew up with The Power of Myth and loving this book and that series, and the idea of storytelling and oral tradition and passing things on. So, you know, when we've been asked about, you know, why 250 years, I mean, this is part of it, which is like, how do you plant a seed very locally and have it grow over time until you kind of almost forget some of the origins and people create new stories around it and it becomes a larger myth. So this was part of our thinking, which was, how do you create an epic legend? The moonshot, you know, Apollo, I grew up, you know, in the 70s, and this was still very present, the idea of people thinking big and like, let's travel to the moon, and having grand visions. And also, I think the 2269 is a moonshot, which is, saying we're going to get there. That is a date that we will all make, together, and it's going to be the greatest celebration of all time. So it's something to look forward to. Now, obviously, there's work involved to get there, but this idea of in the early 60s where it was like we're going to get there, and stating intention and then working towards that, I think is powerful. So grand visions.
And look at this.
We did, yeah. This is like, where's this from? This is 1828, thinking about the future, and you see kind of there's some ideas about what the future might look like, including this kind of grand tube traveling across countries, across continents.
This is 1828. It's absolutely mind-boggling that to see that kind of imagination back then.
The next
and we
one
have
is
something
really
else
good.
like that as well.
Yeah, this is Leaving the Opera in the year 2000, and this was made in 1882.
That's amazing that there's someone in 1882 could imagine that in the year 2000 we still had opera.
It looks like a good night out. Look in restaurants, and it looks like Paris.
I think it's surprisingly futuristic for that time, in fact.
But much like Mary, I think the next slide potentially is the okay, not this one, but like definitely growing up around this idea of travel and the future being fascinating. So
H.G. Wells in there, of course, because he and that's obviously, well, that is him, but he's been photoshopped into something from the movie that was made. So of course he invented the concept of the time machine, and that so much has come off the back of that in popular culture. It really inspired me. I read the book as a child, and it's just an extraordinary book. And it's not Back to the Future where they're going 20, 30 years here and there. He was going millions of years into the future, and what he describes is totally otherworldly.
Pete, now I like imagining you as a child playing with your mom's wooden toys and reading The Time Machine by H.G. Wells.
Yeah, I was a different sort of child, I guess.
Good.
Yeah, I had a black and white childhood.
Yeah, this is what I was thinking when Mary was talking. This is kind of an image of like a book that I loved as a kid, that I had in kind of my kindergarten class, and it was like this just book of visions of the future. And yeah, even just the past few days, we were pulling some of these materials together. It was fun to look at some of these jetpack images. I grew up in America. I mean, I'm dual citizen, so my family's in America, in Washington, D.C. We would go to the National Air and Space Museum, and there they have a jetpack. They have a guy who's hanging in the rafters with a jetpack. And honestly, like while Pete is reading H.G. Wells at home, I am begging my parents to go to the National Air and Space Museum to stare at the jetpack guy. I was so fascinated by that guy. I should have put him in here.
We think that there's a dearth of thinking like this now. Back in the first half of the 20th century, before the war and certainly after the war, there was these huge ideals and massive plans and visions of things we can achieve if we work together. And there doesn't seem to be that feeling in the world anymore. At least not a shared consciousness of it. There are certainly individuals who think like this, but we don't see visions of the future, glorious visions of the future like we used to. There's a lot of doom and gloom. Some of it necessary. I mean, the environmental situation is obviously putting play to that.
Pete, John's mentioned that the modern opera started in around 1600. So it's been going for a couple of centuries when that print was made.
Ah, well, I suppose it stands to reason that it would last a bit longer then.
Yeah, of course, exactly.
So inevitably, things like this were big parts of my childhood. Certainly, Back to the Future really set my imagination on fire. Groundhog Day, a movie obsessed with time. I think I became obsessed with time around the same kind of time that this came out. So these are big influences for me too.
We can skip through these. So yeah, of course, 1999. The idea of a date this was recorded in I don't know, when was it? 84, something like that. But thinking about something that we were working towards, the John Lennon Yoko Ono work, War is Over, just like saying, look, this is making a statement, a declaration of intent.
And the power of the poster too.
The power of the poster. Pete, do you want to comment on the White Album?
Well, the White Album's there just because of the number on the front of it. So you'll have seen a number on the front of the poster too, and you know, part of that was in making sure that everyone was individual, and I suppose trying to increase the rarity a little bit. This is not a limited edition print. We're going to print as many of these as we possibly can, but maybe it's worth getting in there early so your number is as low as possible, because the low numbered white albums go for, you know, huge amounts of money now.
This was certainly on our mind about, you know, as we got deeper into the project, thinking about the 7 generations and the principle that the Iroquois had celebrated, this idea. Also, the time that we started the project years ago, but when we re-kicked it off, it just felt like a tumultuous time politically, in terms of climate change. And so I think it was born again out of a level of like, right, well, let's return to 2269 and a vision. So we re-began, and you'll see we started it, you know, years ago, but we restarted the project in the midterm elections around 2018. So that was the project was partly fueled by that time.
And of course, what we were working on ourselves led into this project as well.
Years ago, I wrote a book with a good friend of mine, a mutual friend of Pete's, To Do Before I Die. And there are some connections with 2269. If you move forward, Pete, I mean, I was really fascinated by what are the stories that you're going to remember your whole life, you know, looking back on your life, what memories stood out. And so my friend Chris and I started a website. This was back in 2002 or 3. So this is pre-Facebook, pre-social media. It would have been a much easier book to do with social media. But we were just begging all our friends, you know, and anyone we knew, friends of friends, and on, for stories, what you'll remember. And it was a big, you know, we're trying to remind people that it wasn't about being famous or making tons of money. It was really about, you know, simpler things. So I think there was a similar spirit, and also just the making an idea like death playful. You know, the sense of like, hey, don't worry, you're going to figure out all the things you want to do, because the way the book worked is you were reading people's stories, as well as in between each chapter you're being asked questions about what was on your list. Now that's called a bucket list now, but when I did the book, it wasn't called that. So yeah, I think there's a similar recognition of recognizing that you're going to die and you're not going to be able to go to the greatest party of all time, but that's okay. Approaching death with confidence, with no regrets. Okay. Oh, and I work in virtual reality, so thinking about the future and thinking about how we can transform education is on my mind, and thinking about how we create new worlds. So that could be another future project for me and Pete, about envisioning 2269 and getting people to contribute to a virtual space.
Hey, Mike, this is George. I just wanted to chime in that somebody took your idea, To Do Before You Die, and turned it into a whole series of things, 1,000 things to do before you die. So you were there first.
We were there first. And there was a great artwork. Someone started doing kind of Before I Die, and you put like your words up of like you complete on a big chalkboard around different installations, which I thought was great. But yeah, that was like 2 years after we did it.
So for my part, with regards to posters, I sort of fell into it accidentally. I'm a huge Beatles fan, and also I've been a student of printing history, and I love these old letterpress printed posters. I just really wanted to own this poster that John Lennon had that inspired this song, being for the benefit of Mr. Kite. And it was just driving me mad that I couldn't buy it anywhere. No one was making it. There were a couple of bad copies out there. So I set about making it myself, and just went to the ends of the world to do it properly. And I hired a wood engraver to create these illustrations, and a letterpress printer to create all the type. And that project worked really well, and kind of led me into doing this project, where I took Stephen Hawking's idea of this genuine experiment he did to prove whether time travel was possible, and created the poster to go with that experiment. And in particular, I love the fact that, and just if you're not familiar with the experiment, basically Stephen Hawking held a party for time travelers, but he didn't tell anyone that it was going to happen until the next day, when he put up a poster inviting people to go to it. So with a piece of paper, he proved, or rather disproved, the possibility of traveling through time to the past. And I love the fact that he could take something as mind-bending as time travel and prove it or disprove it with a piece of paper. And in the middle of that print, there's one line that says, "To be held in the past." That's actually the only line on the print that wasn't written by Stephen Hawking. That was written by Mike, because Mike Mike came over one day when I was working on it, and we were talking it through, and he came up with this dynamite line that just helped encapsulate this idea and this brilliant use of language. But I realized that I'd created 2 archival quality prints, like 2 invitations to things that you couldn't go to. So it was around this kind of time that we were thinking of creating another print of something you could go to, but so far in the future that no one who bought it today could possibly attend. So apart from the printmaking, I work in branding. That's my main business. And these are 3 of the logos I've designed.
So talented, Pete.
You
Keep it up,
maybe
man. Really.
But creating 2269 isn't just a poster. I mean, for us, we are creating a brand, little by little over time. And there's a huge potential to do things that aren't posters. We're already doing the podcast, and later on in this presentation, we're going to tell you about a few other things that we're doing.
It was a conscious effort, definitely, I think, when we're thinking about how do you promote the idea of thinking beyond yourself and in terms of other generations. And so 2269, the actual numbers, that was part of the thinking too, which was what's the language that transcends borders and different languages, and that's numbers. So, in any language, and as George, you asked about the foreign languages, and so we're going to be doing that. So, but they'll all have the same number. So that's that was for a big part of our mind. I'm worried, Pete, that we're gonna we'll lose our audience by talking so long about each of these things. Probably skip through.
Sure. So we're going to talk about. I mean, why did we make a poster? Because it's low tech, and low tech lasts. We can't do this digitally. And when you create a print, people put prints on their wall, and these stay in place, for lifetimes, and they get passed on. Anything of value gets passed on. And you saw the record of owners earlier. That kind of idea will make it more valuable. And of course, if multiple people have this, then there will be this idea of a shared legacy. People around the world will have these prints. I'm going to go through quite a lot of slides now, quite quickly.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking at all the early designs of the poster, or at least highlights along the way. If you see anything you're interested in and want to stop, feel free, but otherwise we're going to go quite quickly, just so you can see how it changed over time. What you're looking at right now is actually the very first note that was written about it, and the project, as you can see, was called 2263, written back in 2013. There is one line on here, 250 years in the making, that actually did last throughout every iteration of the print. So let's go on this little adventure. You can see in some of these early versions that we had a list of cities where these parties were going to be. That's a Chinese version.
Oh wait, go back a couple, Pete, for 1 second, just on the great, because you were talking, George was saying about, go back one more. Yeah, tell your great grandchildren. Yeah, that's right. Okay, cool, carry on. Yeah, lots of notes, and you can see
that it's gone from 2263 to 2266 now.
Yeah.
What does the future look like? And this is just a fun, I don't know how stream, but
this is me and Pete and I one summer
on a sunny day.
This is probably 2016 inside with a whiteboard.
We agonized about every word on this. It's I know to look at the poster now, you might think, well, maybe they rattled it out in a couple of weekends, but this was a long, arduous process over a long period of time.
We were working at the time too. We had other things, but we would come back to it. Yeah. Hello, future. I love that. Let's have that. Yeah.
And this is a map of all these places in the world, and one in Mars on the bottom left-hand corner of all these places where we're going to have the parties. Boy, oh boy. But then 2 years later, after all that, we had a breakthrough. And it was these 2 words, one day.
This came from, I did this in a pub in London where I was definitely, I think, having a challenging week, work-wise, everything-wise. And it was just like, all right, one day we're going to sort things out. One day we'll figure it out. And I called up Pete. I definitely called you up and was like, I think I have a thought.
It was a eureka moment, I would say.
The idea, the combination of, like, we're talking about one day where people kind of come together, but also one day ... things to look forward to. And then Pete said, well, let's just start making, hey, look, Mary, strap your jetpacks on. there is for the greatest part of the world has ever seen. So these are very fast attempts just to see like what the poster would look like. And you can see it says 2268.
Yeah. So the design of the poster changed, carried on changing, but you can see that once we had this idea, we kind of little by little, the design came together. Even though the date it's still April the 4th right now, and then July 7th. And in fact, the very last decision we made was to change it to the 6th of June after trying almost any other date we could come up with.
Well, so the thinking behind that too is also, again, how to make it universal and international, because of course, in America, you have dates differently than the UK. You've got the day and the month, reversed. So it was important to us to have something that could be read both ways. So it was always going to be, 7-7 or 6-6 or 4-4, and 5-5 was taken and 1-1 was taken, and so it was a process. Oh yeah, this is Pete's favorite slide. A great graphic, which is just to mention that we got our design together and then we put it on Kickstarter, and we thought, well, let's just raise some money for partly this is out of community building, building a tribe, and so you want to know if this was coherent for people got what this crazy idea was. The good news was that we found a lot more people were interested in it than we expected, and we raised. We asked for $2,269 pounds, and we got that in that first day. So we printed it, and here's a little video.
So this is a roll of foil being fed into the print machine, and here the poster's coming out the other end.
So at this printing place, we used both their oldest printing machine to do the foil, but then also their newest machine, so that everyone was individually numbered for the invitations.
Yeah, and this is the brass block that was pushed through the foil to create that effect. And here's, of course, what we ended up with. So now we're going to. Not everyone had a chance to do the survey, but we've got enough answers, I think, that it's quite interesting. So we're going to share some of these with you. So first of all, which of these technological breakthroughs will have happened by 2269? So the number one here, the widespread adoption of robotic humanoids as home helpers. That is the one thing that just about everyone agreed on.
The robot butler.
Yeah, nobody thought that we'd achieve immortality. Most people thought we'd achieve a human settlement on Mars. But a cure for hangovers may be in the offing. More likely, it seems, than the eradication of cancer, unfortunately.
Why do we have 2 eradication of cancers there?
We do. It's possible that
big problem.
One added.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly.
So moving along.
Capitalized in one. I think that's what happened.
Right. Yeah, cool.
We asked you to make one other prediction for a significant technological breakthrough to happen before the year 2269. These are great. We've got food replicators, which I'm fully on board with.
More broccoli. Yeah.
What's that?
More broccoli.
Oh, yeah. The ability to record your dreams and share them with others. I can't wait for that. We've got 2 for cold fusion. Hybrid animals.
The ability to record your own dreams and share them with others is going to bring some people together, some relationships, and maybe break some others apart. I think
it's going to change the world as we know it.
There's some pros and cons on that one.
What else do we have? Cure for common cold. Brain body implants. That sounds interesting. Okay, and finally in this section, we've got one more after this. We asked you to think about how old the oldest person alive will be in the year 2269. So you've got quite a range here of a couple of pessimists down on the left who are saying that people won't live as long as they do now, and then right at the top, up to 210.
So 210, you still wouldn't be old enough to get to the party, really.
Well, in 2269, you would.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah, that's true.
That's pretty old.
It's pretty old.
So by the end, someone at the end of this century could make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
True.
One of your grandkids, George, definitely gonna get to the party. What's this one, Pete?
So this is the global population, and I think the surprising thing here is that the small majority are saying that the global population is going to be smaller than it is now. So I don't know whether
which is the only assumption you'd like to make, because if it gets much bigger, that's where we get into disaster. So either we get a handle on this or there's no party.
Yeah.
That's probably a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that's the end of that section. So we want to talk about the present now, what we've got at the moment and what we're working with.
Let's pause for a second, Pete. How is everybody doing out there? We can see your little window. Is everyone doing okay?
Just fine.
Great. Okay. Good. Thank you, Tom. Cool. All right. Let's skip through these, Pete.
Right. This print is we need to make something that's going to last 250 years, and that's a problem in its own right, that requires some serious thought. First of all, let's just talk about the way the poster looks. I don't know how you describe it, but we wanted to come up with something that just felt not futuristic and not so kind of the moment. Didn't want to make it look like it was designed in 2019 particularly, but something that was unique. So we've come up with this perhaps slightly hybrid design. It's slightly Victorian, perhaps slightly futuristic with the foil blocking, slightly carnivalesque. But we also wanted the design to have elements that we could use when we translate it. So these corner pieces, what we call the seed icon on the top and the bottom, and of course the 2269 in the middle, all of those were going to remain as they are as we translate it to Chinese, Spanish, German, and all the other languages, so that even when it looks very different linguistically, it will have that same family feel. And we talked about the foil blocking earlier. That's a pretty good archival technique that is effectively just extremely thin pieces of metal stuck to the page. And of course, the paper we've printed it on is also archival quality. This foil has an absolutely beautiful effect, and of course it picks up the texture of the paper, and depending on the lighting in your room, it can look purple or green or just kind of a warm bronze color. These are the glamour shots of the poster. And as we talked about, every poster was printed digitally with its own unique number as well. So this is printed in pigment ink. Every poster is different. So other than the print, there are some things we're working on. First of all is the 2269 Pantheon. So this is a group of people that embody what we're doing with 2269. And what we're doing is every month we're sending out a print or two to these people and inviting them to join what we're calling the 2269 Pantheon. So these people, some of whom you'll be familiar with, I think.
Roman and Richard. We should say, I mean, they're sent with, it's no strings attached. It's just a note to say, we admire the work you're doing and find it inspiring, good luck. So, and here's a gift. So it's intended in that spirit.
And we sent out a lot more than these. There are lots of other names on the list, like Margaret Atwood, Zadie Smith, Neil Gaiman, Stella McCartney, Ryan Holiday. It's a big list we've got. And it's really a super long-term marketing strategy. So even though everyone's invited to the party, today, we have ideals, and these are the people we want to get invitations to early. And, hopefully their descendants will also be interested in the project. So with that in mind, thinking about people that we want to get prints to, we're interested to know who you might nominate to be on the 2269 Pantheon. We can maybe expand our reach and our thinking a little bit. Does anyone have any suggestions?
I'll tell you, this is also a question we ask people on the podcast, and it's been really, fantastic to kind of get nominees for people that we weren't aware of. Dan Ariely was one. Olivia Newton-John was another one. But not for her songs, but for climate, her environmental activism. So each one, it's always interesting to hear what people think. Okay, that
you got a bunch of names up already.
Okay,
Bill, you've got somebody?
Great.
So,
Bill, were you?
Neil-
Oh, no, no.
Oh,
no.
I thought you had your hand up.
No,
Sorry.
I was thinking of Stuart. Somebody already put down a couple. That's good.
Oh,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yes. So Neil Stevenson, he's Snow Crash, isn't he?
Yes,
Excellent.
and other books as well, many books as well. I wanted to put a name on Roger Penrose.
Tell us about Roger Penrose, George.
Well, he's a brilliant mathematician and physicist who has managed to retain an open mind and an open approach to the big questions, well into the 90s. So,
Great. Yeah, and of course, Stuart and Bina. So Bina wrote the Optimus Telescope. You had as a recent speaker. John, remind me, Kim Stanley Robinson.
Another science fiction writer. He's actually, I'm trying to think what well, he's written a lot on near future, and so near future meaning kind of plausible future, close in centuries. So one of his books is actually set right around 2269.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And he's just written a book called The Ministry for the Future, which is very close in. It's about global warming and the likely effects, and kind of a weird set of solutions that it's like the Analog Magazine's probability zero column. Like, this is not what's going to happen, but it's worth thinking about.
Cool. Okay.
He's
Great.
definitely one of the more realistic science fiction writers. Actually, he has a really for long now thinkers, his California trilogy, kind of written in the 80s, it imagines an early 21st century, like three early 21st century Californias. It's great reading to see like how that envisioning worked and how hard it was to even envision out 20 years.
Nice. That's good.
We'll put him on the list.
Yeah, I like these names. And Beyonce. Kim, comment.
Have to include everybody, and need some people who have huge followings and have deep roots. We've got all the long hairs that we've been talking about, but let's bring some other people in too.
Nice. That's good.
If you could possibly send us Beyonce's address, Kim, we'll.
That'd be great. Yeah. Just
that'd be
email
You
address.
got it.
Okay, good. You get on that. Those are excellent. Good. Yep.
Okay.
Barack,
moving on,
good.
to Mike, the 2269 podcast.
Oh, okay. This is just part of our present day. So thinking about part of right now, what we're in the mode of just getting the word out and helping and finding different ways to communicate and articulate this idea. And so the podcast is another kind of vehicle for that. It's also a great opportunity just to connect with people, particularly right now where I'm spending most of my time, in my living room. So I've done 6 episodes, and each episode is with someone who owns a print, and talking about their life, what about legacy, who they might, what kinds of things they think will stand the test of time. So we're heading towards 2269, and every guest brings a few things that they feel that they want to pass on. So it might be some books, it might be some songs, and so it's the idea is to create a little portrait of that person who's a guest on the show. So it's both kind of entertaining, but of course, you kind of hit some heavy topics that the people. I'm always grateful when people share kind of their deep thoughts about how they want to be remembered and what they feel is important. So that's going on, and another season's about to start in July. One day. So this is back to also thinking, how do we create 2269 in a way that is present day, thinking about some of John's comments, so it isn't just something that's on the wall. And so one day was very much like, well, we're going to celebrate every June 6th, and we're going to learn about the project in different ways. I mean, that's also part of the podcast, which is we're putting an idea out there, but every time we speak to people like all of you or to people on the show, we're learning about the project. So Pete, explain this fantastic.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other part of this, of course, is that every red letter day in the calendar at the moment, or at least most of them, are days that are recognizing past events or great people who have made contributions in the past. So we kind of like the idea of having one day a year where we encourage people to look forwards instead of looking backwards and celebrating the past, to celebrate the future and to think about the possibilities of the future. So one day, as we're calling it, June 6th, is that day to look forwards to something, to plan ahead and to think about how you can help make the world a better place.
So I think the next slide is how we celebrated. Oh no, next slide is this, which is just to say what Pete just said, which is it's a simple idea, and it's about connecting people together. But to John's earlier point, how you define a party is going to vary. So it's not prescriptive at all. It's just how people choose to celebrate the idea of looking forward. So it might be a couple of people, it might be a larger group connecting. So this is just taking a moment on that day to look forward.
Yeah, and Mike, perhaps you could talk us through this one as well.
Oh, this is my favorite graphic. Pete hates this. This almost didn't make the cut. You have to play this a couple times. This idea, yeah, this is sort of how we envision, which is like, look, 2269 starts small. It's one of those little dots, and there's one dot in London, and there's another dot in Boston, and there's another dot in Chicago. But then things grow over time because people are learning, are connecting on June 6th. And they're creating new customs and they're sharing new ideas, and then it grows until that's how you build the greatest party of all time, by using time over centuries to bring people together. So that's my favorite. I love that graphic, Pete.
Yeah, it's definitely not representing global thermonuclear war again.
Pete, I think you did that graphic like 5 years ago, and
Yeah, exactly.
we have to maybe revise it, but you get the gist.
We'll update it. So on June the 6th, 2019, that was the day our Kickstarter campaign finished. So it was, for us, the very first one day. And we celebrated in this pub in London. It was aptly named The Hope.
And
as you can see,
1790.
established 1790, appropriately old. And we had a good old knees up in here.
What was terrific about this event was it was a mix of familiar faces, people that Pete and I knew, but then also a whole bunch of new people that we had no idea who they were. And then that magic moment when you see people begin to connect to each other over this kind of shared topic, and then they find their own topics to connect with. It was like, we kind of at one point, Pete and I huddled in the corner and was like, look, people are talking, this is happening. So it was a great night.
It was a great night. Of course, last year we couldn't have a party, much the same as this year. So we had to come up with something else.
So on this, we asked people to complete a sentence, which was one day, ... So you might go one day I will, or one day we will, or one day everybody. So we just put it out there to see how people might respond to this. And we've got a couple of people on the call who did respond to it, which was fantastic. Are you going to play the video? Will we play the video?
This is the video of the highlights of the responses that we received.
Thank you, Gary.
One day we will have sun again.
One day I will speak Spanish fluently.
One day we'll be able to play mahjong again with my friends.
One day I will see my hairdresser again.
One day this rhubarb is gonna be as tall as me.
One day I'll be able to get a replacement for these glasses.
One day I will be able to play the saxophone.
One day I'll be good at everything I do.
One day I'll go to space. One day I'll be the best Fortnite player.
One day I will make my home in a new country.
One day that to-do list will be all finished.
One day I'll learn to tango.
One day we will go on a road trip.
One day I'll travel to space.
One day.
We'll realize that we have a lot more in common as a human species. Then is different.
One day I'll be expected to work in the office again.
One day I will swim with sharks.
One day we will all be dead.
One day I will publish a book of my photographs about the seaside.
One day I'll be reborn as an eagle, maybe flying over a big celebration in 2269.
One day I will have a giant fluffy dog.
One day we will slow down.
One day I'm looking forward to being able to travel the world.
One day we'll move into our new family home.
One day we will heed the consequences.
One day I will fly by Jupiter in my spaceship.
One day I will open a restaurant.
One day I will leave this house. One day I will be famous.
And one day we will all understand each other.
One day I will see my friend in America.
One day we will all realize that we're all the same and all different.
One day I will be fully present.
One day we will live in a world where the division of labour is more equal.
One day we will escape the age of short-termism and extend our spirit of empathy and concern.
One day I'll start a band with all my favorite music buddies.
One day we will live in a world where everyone has access to a good education.
One day we will live in a world where all children are safe and well looked after.
One day we will listen more and talk less.
One day we'll reminisce over these strange experiences that we've shared.
One day we will be able to go grocery shopping without having to douse our purchases in Dettol when we get home.
One day we'll all dance together.
One day we'll hand this world over to our children and our grandchildren in better shape than we found it.
One day we will really appreciate all the things that we have.
One day we will have resolved climate change. One day there'll be no pollution.
One day we will all again believe in a bright global future, and we will all commit in a sustained way to actually make it happen.
One day we'll meet again.
For everyone to get to terms with our planet, our beautiful blue planet, and make it well again.
One day, everyone will have a home.
One day we'll be thinking like this every June 6th.
One day we will look back on 2020 as the year of change.
Thank you, George and Bill. It's great to see you guys in there.
Mike and Pete, that's just so moving. I've watched it several times, and it just brings a tear to my eye to hear the younger voices, the older voices, everybody expressing their aspirations for what we want to see happen in the future. And and that's the only way we can make it happen, is to have people express those aspirations. So that was really beautifully done.
Thank you, George.
Thank you, George.
It was a treat. Every kind of submission that came in, it definitely felt like a gift. I love John's comment too. John, do you want to read that out?
One day we will all live in the present.
Yeah. There was, I think, one person on there said something in the similar spirit of like wanting to live, presently, and I think that's a healthy perspective. Cool. And so 2020 is that, and of course we thought, look, we're going to be able to meet up in person, and of course that continues to remain a challenge. So 2021 is, again, we have other ideas about getting people together. But on this, we wanted just to put something out there, just a simple idea, a way for people to participate in the larger concept. So, and also not asking, even just asking people to submit videos is a certain, challenge. And so this is just a simple and connecting it back to a celebration, which is, which song would you add to the playlist for the greatest party of all time? And a number of you answered that on the survey, which we loved seeing that. So this is what we're going to put out for this next year.
So we'll encourage people to post on social media and hashtag it appropriately. This person has chosen an excellent song, I think. And then, we'll gather these submissions and we'll create a playlist, or at least start a playlist for the greatest party of all time. And we'll obviously put it on anywhere where we can put playlists. So that's what we're doing this year, to kind of bring it back to the theme of a party.
Can we get a link? Would that be at the 2269.co website, where we can find a link to this so people can do their submissions?
Absolutely.
There will be eventually.
There
Yeah,
will be.
it
Okay.
isn't there now, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
It isn't there yet.
Well, let us know, and we'll get it out to all of our people, and
We
I'm sure
definitely
you'll get
will.
some
And of
great
course,
ideas.
The great
Fantastic.
thing about this is that we can people can submit multiple suggestions. It's not just a question of here's one. You can, if you want to put in 4 or 5, that's fine too.
Definitely looking forward to seeing what that. Well, so in fact, the survey results next, Pete?
Yes, of course, the survey's next.
Yeah. So let's see some of the song picks.
We wanted to put this next, first of all, just because the 2 clear favorites for what people wanted to or thought might be popular at parties in 2269 were live music and great conversation. I guess the sorts of things that you'd want at a party these days.
I know Pete. Yeah.
A little disappointed that nobody thought that rampant uninhibited nakedness was going to be a thing at a party in the future. But I am interested that the 3 suggestions.
Politically incorrect.
Well, we've got drugs, pin the tail on the donkey, which I love. And somebody put an array of graduated psychotic drinks, from a gentle buzz to full-on hallucinations.
No doubt. You can see that happening.
So the next slide is, so we started collecting some ideas for the kinds of songs that you'd like to be added to the playlist. And we've got some really good suggestions here, including some that I really hadn't heard of. So we've got What a Wonderful World, What a Wonderful Song. I Will Find You, That's Life. Age of Ads, which I believe is a Sufjan Stevens song. The next one challenged us a little bit, but I understand that's Georgian. We've got Dark Star, Moon Age Daydream, All You Need Is Love, of course. Tomorrow Never Knows. Got to have some Beatles in there. 1999, which I'd like to have remade as 2269. That's part of our long-term goal, I think, is for Mike to re-record that song as 2269. Groove is in the Heart by Delight, and 99 Luftballons, the 80s hit from Nina.
So already, I would definitely enjoy. I could hang out to these songs and with some drinks with all of you. That'd be good. I don't know. I Will Find You. So I'm going to check that one out. But yeah, excellent. Love seeing
excellent.
This.
So we've got another question for you now. Something totally different. Just again, part of really getting to know you guys. We're trying to make something that lasts a long time, and we find it interesting to know what things other people have in their houses that they hang on to and treasure. Those things are often old and passed down through families, although not always. But we're interested to know what the oldest things are that you own, and I guess we're thinking about man-made objects rather than rocks or things that are genuinely millions of years old.
Mary's got a quilt, a family quilt.
I can't see the comments, so thanks for reading them out, Mike.
Sure, yeah. So Mary,
it's one of those Victorian ones. It was a style of crazy quilt where they took all kinds of little pieces and embroidered them. And it's gorgeous, but crazy.
Is it genuinely Victorian?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And it's still in good condition?
Yep.
Is it something that people add to over time, or was it all made at one time?
No, apparently they owned a millinery shop and they used the scraps to put together, and it's something I don't know the exact date it was made, but it was definitely late in the 1800s during this crazy quilt phase. So.
Is it framed on the wall, or is it hidden away in a box?
No, it's in a box, and I'm worried about that. I want to do something else with it. I don't know what to do with it. So.
Is there a moment where you pass it on, where you were like, okay,
oh yeah.
Okay, so I've got a couple, and they're family items too, and some quilts and a couple pieces of furniture. But I also, and there's a great story behind this, which you don't want to hear today. But I have a bound set of newspapers that I believe, great grandfather published and printed in 1825.
Wow.
In Milton, Pennsylvania, including a report on the day on July 4th, 1826, which was the day that Thomas Jefferson and John Adams died, on the same day within 2 hours of each other. So that's a treasure. For me, that's a family treasure.
Wow.
So
that is incredible.
That's something.
And it was found in an old house stuck between some rafters down in the wall. It had fallen down there like, I don't know how long ago. And it was very, very happenstance that it ever came in possession of the family. So.
And it survived all the weather and kind of, so it was.
Well, in fact, all that paper is cotton, it's all cloth. And so I also have a lot of newspapers from World War II that were collected by my grandparents, all the famous, D-Day, and war, VE Day and VJ Day, all those. And those are just simply falling into dust. You can't even pick them up without the paper just disintegrating. And yet this book of newspapers, which is 125 years older, it's yellowed, but it's as good as the day it was printed.
Oh, I'd like to see a photograph. That sounds really cool. Very cool.
Well, remind me. I'll be glad to send you. I did take some photos of it to show to an historical society in the town that it was printed in, and so I've got some that I can show you actually.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be good. Thank you, Bill. And there's some other ones here. Pete, you can't see the comments, but I can. A hand-carved ebony tree piece from my great-great-grandfather. So that's from Emily. That sounds beautiful.
I'm going to just jump in. This is Wenda. We lived in an antique in Massachusetts, and we moved out in 25 days in September this year. And we moved to Colorado, where we're going to spend part of our time in a townhouse. And my children that are range in age from 44 to 35 said, well, your antiques are not very comfortable, and so don't bring them. So I didn't bring all of them, but it's been such a joy to see our grandchildren, even our granddaughter who's only 2, because I don't know the exact age of a slant top desk, but it has so many secret compartments and drawers. And George and I had so much fun. And guess what? The middle generation that didn't care about it, now they see the grandchildren who are 2, 4, 10, and 13 enjoying it. So, we shouldn't get rid of things just because they're uncomfortable.
I love that.
And I'm sure the older they get, the more
that's great.
Love those things.
Pete, I almost want to change the question to this for 2021 away from the song to what's the oldest. I mean, I love hearing these stories and to see the visuals of these, to see the quilt, to see all these pieces, and be incredible.
I see that Grant put down here that he's got a Bible that's been family for 150 years. And in I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but when you talk about the time vault, the vault that you're, whatever it is, the cornerstone that you're going to put all this stuff into, you ask people about what books to bring, and I always think a knee-jerk reaction is someone's going to, put a Bible in there, But why? Why do we think in those terms? It's kind of interesting that.
You're right. No one has so far. I always love hearing what people's books, what recommendations there are, and I've bought a few on the basis of those recommendations. But yeah, no Bibles yet.
That's a slightly different question than the one that the Long Now Foundation has of, what books do we want to gather now that will be available if we need to rebuild civilization. I think the idea of what's ancient that's with us now that will still survive and be valuable to us in the future. So that's a great question.
Yeah. I love to see the 1919 Gibson mandolin that John has. That sounds amazing. Is that a family heirloom, or did you come across it? Oh, there he is. Can you see? So if you look in the chat, you can see John just brought oh, wow.
Probably, I would mute before I tune it, but no, it's not an heirloom. It's, I actually had I had a bonus from a previous job that was burning a hole in my pocket, and a friend who worked at Pioneer Music in Portland. And I walked in looking for a stage mandolin because I was working as a musician at the time. And And she said, "Oh, we've got this mandolin that you absolutely want." And it's like I got the mandolin that I could never really gig in any of the bars that I was playing with, because they don't make any more like this one, right?
Ah, wow.
Well, can you play? Can you strum it? Can you?
Yeah, it looks like.
Hey!
Bravo! Bravo!
Oh man,
Fantastic.
you made my day. That's so great.
Wonderful. Sounds great.
Brilliant. Oh wow, that's excellent. Thank you all for participating in that. We can come back to that, but we'll wrap up this section. But that was excellent. What do we have? Oh, future.
So into the future. The future of this project, of course. So we have some plans. We're working hard to increase awareness at the moment. We've just hired someone to help us out with social media. We are thinking about doing some student projects, and also how we can adapt the print to make it relevant, sometimes perhaps more affordable for other people, and including other languages as well. We've got more of the podcast coming up, and we're going to be talking about introducing the 2269 Trust to you as well. And beyond that, one day is going to keep getting bigger and better. We want to get all major languages covered eventually, and start thinking about how else we can push this brand out there. We're thinking about perhaps products that are sustainable and built to last. So let's start looking at the idea of creating some other prints.
One is the college version, which is, this is in line with what Pete just said about, we've met people along the way, including at a Long Now event in London that Chris Daniel organizes. And there was one young guy, Portuguese guy, who was so taken with the concept of 2269, but also, just thought like, well, the print, we want to make sure this is affordable for anybody. So there's a version we talk about, which is a college version, which is around something that again will spark conversations in dorm rooms, and it'll be in the realm of 25 bucks. But then also the next slide is around a free version, which is designing something that's just a PDF that people can download and print themselves, and again as a way to spark conversation amongst each other about thinking beyond, both thinking kind of beyond yourself and other generations, but also thinking, having things in perspective in the present day.
Yeah, I think this is an important step, just because if everyone is invited, we need to make sure that it's accessible for everyone.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to designing that. We also are excited about putting the idea out and letting people respond to it in their own ways. So, we've written briefs as part of our own careers. So writing a brief for 2269 and connecting with universities and students and seeing how people might respond in different media. So it might be painting, it might be short films, it might be music, might be plays. It's just putting it out there and then allowing people to react to it. And we expect that some stuff will completely surprise, which is welcome, and some will be serious, and some will be lighthearted. So again, it's allowing people to react to it in their own personal way. And so before you go, Pete, on that, Emily's just popped up. And thank you, Tom. Tom says, I'd love to see the trust. That's a fantastic idea. Emily says, where can we find information about student projects? I'm a language teacher and would love to tell students about it. That's great. Well, one of the reasons why we like to talk to groups is to put the idea out there. We talked to George a little bit about it, and Bill, and so that is part of our plan for the summer, is to get those briefs out so that it's something that people can react to in the fall. So Emily, we can pick it up separately, because currently there's not a brief on the website. It's just part of our list of things that we've are working on for the rest of the year.
So yeah, do reach out or give us your contact details so we can talk to you a bit more about that.
Yeah. So student projects, and then also international artists. Again, it's a connected idea, which is to give parts of the original print away and allow people to react to it. And so you would recognize it as part of the 2269 family, but having artists react to it in their own way. So whether it's that for us is exciting, much like when we got the one-day contributions where people were answering the question in their own way. It's seeing artists react to it, and again building out our own tribe, our own family. So this is
we'd love to see some artists do something wildly different with the 2269 poster. So we put this slide in just because this idea isn't new, of course. This is the earliest example we could find of brands doing it. This is Chateau Mouton Rothschild, the French wine producer. Back in 1958, they commissioned Salvador Dali to create the label on the left. The one in the middle is Picasso in 1973. And then we have Warhol in 75. So, what have great artists got in common with alcohol other than dependency? Perhaps not much, but certainly we love the idea of creating something completely unique that will, again, be considered valuable as time goes on.
Okay, so Gary, out of curiosity, he says, out of curiosity, do the dots on the sides of the poster beside the 2269 spell a message like the parachute for the Perseverance Mars lander?
That sounds like a good idea. I mean, I mean, of course, you can read into these things whatever you want to, but I mean, we just thought it was a nice pattern.
Carry on, Pete.
Okay. So other language versions. So this is such a vital part of the project because it's intended to be a global project. Everyone's invited. At the moment, we've produced the poster in English. Clearly, we need to start making other languages. So we have started on some translations, and in the short term, we want to work on some of the major languages like Chinese and Spanish, and also balancing it with languages in countries where we think we can get the print out as well. So that's pretty high on our list of priorities. And more podcast.
Yep, already mentioned that. So that from July. Yeah, and hopefully, get some of you out there. 2269 Trust. This is something that, in fact, was part of the original concept. You want to comment on this one, Pete?
Yeah. So it's really the idea of compound interest. So it's something we were thinking of right at the start. The idea being that even if you put relatively small amounts of money aside today, they can turn into mind-boggling figures if you can factor in the magic of compound interest. So what we're doing is creating the 2269 Trust. It's going to be a UK-registered charitable trust. And the reason we're doing that is because, firstly, it's something that can seek to educate people about the benefits of long-term thinking, and also compound interest. So not just financial compound interest, but this idea that putting in a little bit of effort day by day actually gives you something to build on, and it builds faster and faster the longer you go.
Hey Pete, do we know the source of that quotation? John flagged that up. Do we know that that's Einstein?
Oh, it's one of those quotes that was attributed to Einstein, but nobody really knows where it comes from. It's probably Mark Twain, like everything else,
or Yogi Berra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So John's got the 940. Well, any quote attributed to Einstein is almost certainly not him. I think that's probably right. We also came across that where earlier on we had that quotation of, "What's the future? The best way to predict the future is to invent it." And it was like 19 different people said that.
Yeah, it's impossible to know.
So we ended up moving past that. But we did. I mean, this was such a core idea at one point where we weren't doing a print. We were meeting people to try and figure out how to start a fund. And it's a longer story we won't talk about now, but at one point Pete and I were talking to banks and getting advice about how to set it up. And it was so much so that it became a little bit of a rabbit hole. And so we ended up putting the project on ice because it was taking so much time to try and figure out. And then we came back later to, let's just keep it simple right now and let's start with the print. But this has always been something that we thought was an interesting idea.
Yeah, so by creating a charitable trust, of course, it doesn't have to pay tax, which means that if you're attracting interest, the tax would destroy the compound interest. So Mike and I have already put aside just £500 from the Kickstarter money. And we put that aside on June 6, 2019. get this going. So that's going to be transferred to the trust when it opens, and we will most likely invest it in stock market tracker funds. So a little question here. We'd like to open this to the crowd too. Just take a wild guess. If we invested £500 or $500 in 2019, if you could assume a compounded annual interest rate of 7%, which is the average stock market return in the UK, how much do you think? Pete? What's that?
What do people win? This is like the jelly bean jar.
What do you know? Well, I don't know. Let's find out. But if you could take a wild guess and stick it into the chat, I'd be interested to see the figures people come up with. So it's 250 years of compound interest.
Enough to retire on.
There is a counterpoint to the theory of compound interest too, and that you know, exponentials are notoriously unreliable because you know, exponentials really don't exist in nature. You have the situation where bacterial growth in a colony looks like it's exponential, and then something happens at a point where it eats all the food. So you know, compound interest is hopefully something that can accompany a universal thriving and not just a particular thriving as time goes on.
There certainly are the potential for massive problems. I mean, one of them is, yeah, how do we invest with an institution that's going to last that long, or a stock market that's going to last that long?
Right, and the other point, Gary makes a good point, is that, yeah, there's the compound annual interest rate, there's also the inflation rate, and if it gets inverted, the true value of it is going to go down over time.
So do we have any guesses there? I'm afraid I can't see.
125,000, Tom, yeah.
Go, George, you read them.
Grant Stevens says one with a lot of zeros. I can't read that many zeros. John Kaparsky said 6122.01. Lewis, several million. Have you done the calculation yet?
We've done it, yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay.
So there's, yeah.
Well, here's the number we came up with. Oops. 577,334,783 pounds and 28 pence.
Which, all right. And getting back to Gary's point, what will that buy in 2269?
Well, I did a quick look at historical inflation rates, and you know, this is all pie in the sky at this point, but accounting for a potential inflation based on the average of the last 250 years, this would be worth about 3.5 million in today's money, which is still not bad for an initial investment of £500. But the idea is of the trust is that we would actually put a proportion of every sale and every bit of money that we make from 2269 into the pot to help it along. So you know, little by little in the future, there'll be a pot of money that someone can do some good with.
Thank you, Lewis. Lewis says this is going to be a memorable party indeed. So we're almost done with the deck, and then we can see each other. So let's carry on, Pete.
Yeah. Well, this is just the official explanation of the trust. We won't dwell on that, perhaps.
Yeah.
So on to the big day itself. Well, of course, we don't know what's going to happen, but this is how it's going to look.
There may or may not be fireworks, and of course, this is dependent on people participating in it. And so there's one thing that we labored on a little bit was the record of owners has a couple paragraphs that explain the project, because our thinking was people buying the print right now will have a better understanding of what the project is, because you know, they can go to the website or whatever, but at some point people will just be handing over the print and the record of owners without some of this maybe supporting material. So we wanted to write a couple paragraphs that just captured what the idea was for us, and to wish people luck, you know, with it. So Pete, this is the what we put together, and it was a strange exercise to kind of think about how do we write something that will not make us cringe a year from now, let alone 250 years from now. So when people get the print, part of the record of owners says, as the current owner of this invitation, you are entrusted with its preservation and pledged to one day pass it to the next generation. This simple act, action, the simple action performed over time by you and a growing community of others like you will lead to an unprecedented worldwide event on June 6th, 2269. By putting the invitation up on your wall, you will become part of an epic story designed to unfold over centuries. By keeping it up, you will help remind us all to work towards a future worth celebrating. And by passing it on, you will be remembered. Our time here is relatively short, but expanding our frame of reference into the distant future can help us make better choices in the present day. A little perspective can transform how we live our lives. So every June 6th, known as One Day, we encourage you to gather friends and celebrate not just how far we have come, but how much further we can go. Put it up, keep it up, and pass it on.
Beautifully read.
And for that, I think that's where we got to. If you press forward to the next carriage there, Pete, I think that's just a. Oh, I was going to say it's a thank you, but we've got one more pack of results from the survey.
So I love this. I love this. We asked you.
Yeah, this is terrific.
Still be in business. I think maybe the crowd is a little biased.
Maybe this is all definitive, scientific.
But we'll take that and we'll put that on the website.
Hey Pete, one of the questions about the brands that you listed is how many of them were around 250 years ago?
Oh, that's good. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think there was one, right? Maybe not.
You know, we should have put, there are some, and in fact, how do you say, so John, you're a musician, you know the cymbals, Zildjian?
Zildjian, yeah, they're an Armenian family in Massachusetts that started a company here, but their family's been making cymbals for centuries.
I think it's like, yeah, 400 years, like that would be a good one.
They're in Western Mass.
I didn't know that. That's neat. I like that we see Facebook was 0%.
I like that too. Yeah, and McDonald's. That's nice to see.
Yeah.
I think that snack bar in Japan that the Times wrote about that's been going for 1,000 years, they'll be around.
I haven't heard of that.
What's this?
Oh, there's a bunch of places in Japan. There's a corporation. I think the oldest corporation in Japan was whatever the equivalent of incorporation is, like the year 900 or 1000. It might be a paper manufacturer. I'm not positive, but it's an old. Well, we stayed at a ryokan in Japan. Which was not unique by any stretch, and it was run by the 17th generation of the same family, and that started about the late 1600s, early 1700s. So.
That's amazing.
So maybe when you translate to Japanese, you might have to, 250 years is a drop in the bucket.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't even notice that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Funnily enough, I mean, it really is in those, when you think about it in those terms, and yet, some people imagine this to be possibly far into the future. It's all very relative. So that's the brands. We asked you about the most widely spoken language, and I think it looks like English is the winner here. But there are, people thought also maybe we would combine languages, maybe like Esperanto.
And machine code. That's an interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah, true. Will there be school? Yes, I think there will be school.
This is a hard-hitting question.
Yeah. Okay.
But school is going to change. It's going to have to change. Certainly, we all see that more over the past year.
Okay, this is fun. Name a movie that you'd like your descendants in 2269 to watch. Forrest Gump, Defending Your Life.
Albert Brooks.
Blade Runner, Modern Times. Yes. Blues Brothers. Great choice. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Yes, let's really mess with these people. Give them some very confusing things to watch.
Great film.
Doctor Strangelove, Arrival.
I love Arrival.
Groundhog Day, Star Wars, and Portlandia. Yes, absolutely. That will really mess with people.
I have to check out Portlandia. I don't know that one.
Oh, really? Oh, I love Portlandia. It's just absolutely hilarious.
Huh.
Right. Okay. This is the last bit of survey results. And we're serious about this. At least I am. We want to mix a cocktail to be drunk every June 6th from now until the end of time. What should we call it? 2269, 2269 Shandy, COVID Mary, the 2269 Brain Warp, a classic, Party Planner, the Scintillation Cocktail, Please Baby, Tomorrow Never Knows. Was that the same person who put down Tomorrow Never Knows as the song?
Yeah, it was.
Maybe that goes along with the hangover cure.
Yeah. They were related in some way. I can't remember.
The 2269 and the final countdown, Future Awaits. I love them all.
Yeah.
Waits.
Well, I
what's
mean,
going to
that's
be in it, guys? What's going to be in it?
well, that's the question for next time, maybe. But I had a go at trying to mix one last year, and I'm just not good at that stuff. And after you've mixed a couple and you've drunk them, it's very hard to come up with anything good.
But that's exactly. I mean, it's not necessarily up to us. I mean, we'd love to put it out there and see what people can come up with what that cocktail might be.
Well, I traveled through Singapore a couple of years ago, and of course, people queue in a long line outside Raffles Hotel to drink a Singapore Sling, which costs something like $40 or something obscene. And there's a story behind this cocktail. It's actually not a great story, but they make a fortune out of this cocktail, and this cocktail has lasted, for hundreds of years, and it's a central part of their, the tourist culture in Singapore. So this idea that something like a cocktail might also stand the test of time, I find quite an interesting idea. So that's all from us.
Nice.
Cool.
All right, so I do have a question for you guys. And I mean, we've done a lot of. I'm a proud owner of several of your posters, and we've talked about this a lot. And we're looking at a project ourselves that leverages, pardon me, the 2269 idea and logo and everything else. How do you envision shepherding the 2269 brand? In other words, a couple of things I was thinking. Let me just say a couple of things, but that's the question: is what are you going to let loose the 2269 notion and idea to whoever is interested in pursuing it? Are you going to try to control it in some way so that there is a filter for the ideas that come along and the way that the notion of the party is managed? So the question is around how do you manage the brand? And one of the reasons I asked that was, a lot of people could get behind it. The notion of a 250-year time cycle. We struggle with the notion of 10,000 years. I mean, everybody struggles with the notion of 10,000 years. It's like, how do you get your head around that? Now, it's a great prompt that we've inherited from the Long Now Foundation to for deep thinking, et cetera. But the notion of the 2269, 250 years, is much more digestible, and is it seems to me that not only art projects, but also developmental projects, local projects, things that organizations like, say, a locally focused organization like Long Now Boston. It may be that 2269 is a time frame that makes our conversation or people's conversations much more accessible in terms of the future. And so, I was just sort of running rampant with that in my own alleged mind. And I was just wondering what your plan and notion is for managing that brand and managing the concept.
That's a great question, and something that we've talked a fair bit about. And I think we're still beginning to learn what that is. I mean, so we do have, one part of that answer is that our intention is not to be a bottleneck on the project. We're not gatekeepers, but I think part of what we're trying to do with with various ways of communication, the podcast included, is what kind of values the project has. So what does it mean for us? So I think over time that what the project stands for will become, clearer. So that's part of it. We also have an advisory board that we invited, so from early 2019 that are part of the group that can give us a different perspective already. So that's a mix of men and women. So it's not, again, just, my perspective or Pete's perspective on the project. So that's part of it. But we're also, we certainly don't pretend to know everything about the project. So I think we're sort of learning each time about, what the project means to other people, what the project means to us. And so we have had some practical conversations around, succession too. I think there will, Pete and I won't be around. So there will be an element of handing over some shepherdness. I think there will be people who will be part of that, who will evangelize, about the project. And of course, the intention is that as you pass the print to someone else, you are part of that journey of sharing values, and partly who you're choosing to share it with is part of that choice. Pete?
The issue of control is an interesting one. Initially, my instincts were to try and control it as much as possible. But of course, that's going to be impossible. So I think the trick is really to find the balance of like what things can we control and what things are we happy to, what areas are we happy to relinquish control. For example, we're very keen that, if 2269 takes off in any way, it's not hijacked by, for example, a religious group or a political group. So, Mike and I have committed to effectively spending the rest of our lives on this. And we'd certainly like to get to the point where we have, captured the DNA and have put it together in such a way that there's enough flexibility for other people to do other things with it inside certain parameters.
I remember Chris Daniel, actually from Long Now, London, we had a conversation exactly about this, Bill, and he had a good point, which is you also you want people to react to the project authentically, and that's not about prescription. And so that there's a fantastic opportunity for people to surprise you, to exceed, our imagination, and people do like where you go, I would never have, come across that idea and thought to articulate it that way. We're looking forward to those opportunities. So we need to put it out there and then be open to it.
But also, if some of these predictions about how long we're going to live are true, then we may be around for another 100 years looking after this thing. We've got plenty of time.
I've got a question about the object itself, and some of the things that you were talking about remind me so much of Fluxus art. The poster, the Beatles album with the number on it, even your poster with the number on it. And handing it down through generations and having that record. I guess one question is, why not an NFT?
I've been reading about it recently. I don't think we're quite ready to, certainly I don't know enough about it to answer the question, but I think, like there was a slide earlier that said that, paper is this low-tech way of propelling a message into the future, and I think we're going to stick with paper as for that reason. I'm not sure that I really see NFTs lasting in the same way that I don't think a lot of digital stuff is going to last.
Right, by definition, they're not lasting. They're ethereal by definition.
Yeah.
Same thing with the currencies that are being used to tokenize those non-fungible tokens. So there's something powerful about something real, something physical, something live, something that you can, So passing on an NFT to your heirs is just like, it's another electronic transaction, just like anything. So it doesn't have that tangibility.
When I read about NFTs, I think about Warren Buffett's quote about cryptocurrencies, which is that he considers them to be rat poison squared.
So I just want to break in for a second. We're getting close to the end of the planned 2-hour break, and so anybody that feels that they want to leave, that's great. If anybody wants to continue just hanging around for a little bit, that's also great. Thank you all for the participation. Thank you, Mike and Pete, for making such a great and thoughtful, not only a program for us, but the mission that you're on and what you're trying to achieve there.
Yeah, it's great. It's
and-
well conceived.
yeah.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, and our technical team, Gary and Kim and Mary and Jennifer and Anurag and great job pulling this together. And we also want to invite people to join us next month, which is June 7th. That one's going to be back at 7:30, and it is meeting Lee Vinsel and Andrew Russell, the founder of the Maintainers. So here's one of the questions we may pose to them. Okay, we've got this great, concept moving forward with 2269, and so now we need infrastructure to help us make sure that that the pieces of the puzzle that are put together are going to last. You guys have a great start with the quality, the timeliness and quality of what's being produced. It's supposed to last 200 years. Well, we want everything else that's going on in the society to last 200, the good stuff to last 250 years too. So that should be a good program.
We should mention
And
too, George, sorry, we should mention that we've created a code for all of you. Pete, do you want to comment on there's a 30% off on the print itself for this?
Yes, that
group?
was actually our very last slide. If you
we cut off your slides, sorry. So
that's okay.
we'll
But if you want to
post-
go
we'll put in the
to,
chat.
No, that's good.
if you want to go to 2269.co and click on the links for the poster during checkout, if you enter Long Now Boston, all one word, all capitals, then you'll get a 30% discount on the unframed 2269 print.
That's very generous. Thank you. So,
George,
Kim, anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to. I'd like to extend thanks to Peter and Mike. It's been big fun. I'd also like to thank our audience for coming and participating. I think it's been great. And please remember to tell someone else about your Long Now point of view. Because if we lived in a Long Now world, maybe then everyone could attend Mike and Pete's party in 2269. So, keep it in mind and pass it on.
Thanks.
And for those who are staying, let's pull up a chair and unmute and play some foosball and robot tag and, choose your poison.
Yeah, go 4D. Go 4D.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you. Take care. Yeah.
So that's it. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.